Hello and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're well. I thought we'd join Penny on the sofa today for, well, she's having a snooze. We're going to have a chat about yoga books. I get asked quite often about recommendations for books to read, whether you're maybe a beginner to yoga and you just want to start to understand a little bit more about it, or people who've been practicing yoga for a while and want to kind of sink their teeth into something meatier. You know what I mean? So I've put together 5 quite different recommendations of books that I love, and just by chance, it's a really rainy day when I'm filming this, so I've got the lovely sound of rain outside, which always makes me feel like I want to just cozy up and read a book. So let's dive in and I will give you my 5 recommendations. So book number 1 is this book here, Yoga 365, Daily Wisdom for Life on and Off the Yoga Mat by Susanna Harwood-Rubin. Now this is a book I've had for years and it's a really nice gift to give someone, anyone you know who loves yoga, or if you're looking for something to put on your own Christmas list maybe. This is such a nice book to dip in and out of. So there's a page for each day of the year, and each day has a little either teaching or a little quote, little bits of wisdom. So for example, let me find today's date. So today is 17th of November when I'm filming this. Let me have a little scroll through, 17th of November. The title is Thank People in Your Life Today. How often do you feel thankful but don't find the words to express your feelings? How often do you feel grateful to someone but think that what you have to offer in the way of thanks is insufficient? Release that thinking and take action today by expressing your gratitude to them. Any sincere expression of thanks is meaningful. It doesn't need to be original or grandiose. Letting people know how you feel is what counts. Today, say thank you to the people who have helped, inspired, and loved you. Let them know you are grateful. Draw it out of your heart and into the world. So that is number 1, and this is one that I would say would be a good gift for anyone who loves yoga. Then book number 2 is the Yoga Manifesto by Nadia Gilani. So the little tagline on this is How Yoga Helped Me and Why It Needs to Save Itself. This book I was really excited about when it came out, and I'm still very excited about now that I have read it. This came out this year, which is why this is a hardback copy, but I believe the paperback may be out already at the time of filming this. If not, it's probably on its way pretty soon. This is a personal account from Nadia of her journey through life with yoga. So a bit of background, Nadia is a South Asian woman living in London. She, through the book, talks about her journey with her sexuality, with eating disorders, with mental health struggles, and how yoga has kind of come and gone throughout her life along that journey, and the lessons she's learned through different yoga teachers, through different classes and experiences of teaching herself. So it's a really interesting personal account of, well, she is a brilliant writer for one thing. She is a journalist, so she writes in such a beautiful way that I flew through the book. So if you're looking for a page turner, this would be my recommendation. It's also really insightful to read a book that is about the world of modern yoga from the perspective and through the eyes of Nadia, who is a woman from an Indian family who was born and raised in the UK, in London. So she does talk in depth about some of the issues around cultural appropriation, around kind of whitewashing in the modern yoga world, and her battles and struggles with finding her place as a South Asian woman teaching yoga and practicing yoga in London. It's a meaty book. It's a really good one to sink your teeth into. I keep coming back to that expression, but it definitely is. So really this book is for anyone who wants to understand yoga a little bit more, but also anyone who's just interested in reading a kind of autobiographical account of a yoga journey and someone's battles through life and how yoga has helped with that. So this really, of the 5, I think this is the one that I am the most excited to tell you about. Book number 3, I'm recommending The Tree of Yoga by Iyengar, the definitive guide to yoga in everyday life. You can probably see by how kind of dogged and slightly stained I think this book is. It's one that I've come back to time and time again. So I'll read a little bit from the back of the book just to give you a bit of a flavour as to what this includes. The tree is a metaphor for life and the practice of yoga, and this anthology of essays from BKS Iyengar offers essential advice on the fundamental care necessary to maintain both, including health, daily life, family, love, death, and faith. Follow his guidance and discover the path to a long, healthy, and happy life. In case you don't know, Iyengar, well, as it says on the back of the book here, he's widely credited as the person who brought yoga to the West. So he's written quite a few different books. There's also The Light on Yoga, which is quite a popular one. That one is a bit more of a focus on the practical side of yoga. So it has images of postures and breakdowns of poses and practices and things. Whereas this one is more of a, well, it's a text there. I don't think there are any images in here particularly. It has a brilliant glossary in the back, which I've referred to quite a lot of times, which has a variety of different Sanskrit terms that are used throughout the book. And he, well, translates them and gives a little bit of context. So if you're trying to understand a bit of Sanskrit or trying to get to grips with some of the terminology within yoga philosophy, then the glossary in here is really, really helpful. So this book I would recommend, maybe not for a complete beginner to yoga, but for someone who's been practicing for a while, who maybe knows a little bit about the philosophy, but you want to go a little deeper, this would be the book for you. On to book number 4, Susanna Barkataki's Embrace Yoga's Roots, Courageous Ways to Deepen Your Yoga Practice. Now, this is a big book. It is really like a textbook or a workbook, I guess. And that's exactly what it's designed to be like. So, well, again, I'll read from the back. So, Embrace Yoga's Roots is for you if you practice, teach, or want to learn yoga and integrate your values while respecting ancient yoga philosophy. So this really is a textbook about how to respect yoga, how to practice and or teach yoga in a way that honors and embraces the roots of yoga. Susanna is very generous in the way that she's put this book together because it is like a workbook. You start from the very beginning. It's a very good place to start. And she talks you through the history of yoga, philosophy of yoga, but in really good bite-sized chunks. So there'll be a short chapter, all the important information in a very digestible way. So she doesn't overcomplicate things. She keeps it as simple as it can be. And then at the end of each little chunk, at the end of each chapter, there are a few questions to reflect on, which I love because if I'm reading something that's quite heavy or that's really dense with information, I know that I often just sort of plow through it all and then I get to the end and I'm like, how much have I actually retained of that information? A lot of it seems to just disappear straight away. So the way that she's structured this, where you have these questions at the end of a chapter, it does really encourage you to just sit there for a minute and think, have I actually understood what she's explained in this chapter? What do I think about it? It helps you to really absorb the information. And through the book, she tackles the tricky issues around cultural appropriation, how yoga has developed into this billion-dollar industry, what some of the problems are there, why they are problematic, who they may offend. It's really fundamental, I think, for anyone who's practicing yoga, but particularly anyone who's teaching yoga. I think everyone who teaches yoga should study and read this book in detail. And finally, on to book number 5. This one is not specifically a book about yoga. In fact, it's not a book about yoga at all. But the teachings and the wisdom in this book is very closely linked to the yamas and niyamas, the moral disciplines, moral guidelines from the 8 limbs of yoga. And the book is The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, a practical guide to personal freedom, a Toltec wisdom book. Don Miguel Ruiz was born in Mexico, and this knowledge in this book, this kind of wisdom, comes from the ancient Toltec civilization in Mexico. Again, I'll read you a little snippet from the back. In the 4 Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz reveals the source of self-limiting beliefs that rob us of joy and create needless suffering. Based on ancient Toltec wisdom, the 4 Agreements offer a powerful code of conduct that can a powerful code of conduct that can rapidly transform our lives to a new experience of freedom, true happiness, and love. These teachings, there are 4 big lessons really in this. It's a short book, so it's an easy one to get through. 4 agreements that you make with yourself. And then it of course goes into detail and examples, but they're quite simple. In fact, I'll read you what they are, the 4. So the first one is be impeccable with your word. So that's a simple rule that you can remember, that you can keep in mind, but as you'll read in the book, there's just a lot more to it than just that. The other 3, I'll read them very quickly. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions, and always do your best. Now, I know those sound like really simple concepts, but I promise if you read this book, if you take the time to go through it, you will see where the deeper wisdom within those 4 agreements is. So this is a book, again, that I would recommend to anyone who's interested in self-study, self-inquiry, growth. I guess actually it does say at the top, personal growth / self-help. So it is within that kind of category. So that's my 5th recommendation, the 4 agreements. Now, before I wrap up, one last thing to say. If you are actually looking to really study yoga as a concept, as a philosophy, as a system, then you need to be going into those ancient Sanskrit texts that of course are translated now. You don't need to learn Sanskrit, but you want to be looking at texts like the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. I'll put a little list in the description below of some of these ancient texts, and maybe if you're interested, I'll make a video soon a little bit more in depth about the history of yoga and where these texts come in and what sort of knowledge comes from which texts and things, because there's so much there in those old Sanskrit texts. If you do a yoga teacher training course, then you will dive into some of those texts and study them. But if you are just looking for something that's relatively easy to read to broaden your understanding of yoga, then these 5 books that I've mentioned are a great place to start. I hope that's been helpful. If you have any other book recommendations, please leave them in the comments below. I'd love to see what you've been reading and enjoying. If you haven't already, I'd love it if you would consider subscribing and joining this little Emily Rowell yoga community. Like the video if you found it helpful. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.